Get out.
7 levels, 21 entries. From a man plowing into pedestrians over a minor verbal argument to a Russian missile narrowly missing a civilian car. The deeper we go down this iceberg, the clearer it becomes that dash cams have captured some of the most unsettling moments out there. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. Debris launches off truck and destroys dash cam. Unshackled cargo on open trucks has been at the root of some of the most disturbing yet entirely preventable accidents. The danger becomes far greater on highways and motorways. When vehicles move at high speeds, an abrupt stop can quite literally be a death sentence. A very practical example of this comes from dashcam footage recorded in Thailand. According to reports, the incident took place on the Bangkok motorway and shows a car trailer behind a small cargo truck. The car wasn't tailgating at all. In fact, it was keeping a considerably safe distance. But that didn't matter at all when, in a split second, something fell off the truck and hurtled straight toward it. The truck had lost part of its load, which rolled back with extreme momentum and slammed into the victim's car windshield. The impact was so violent that it cracked the glass immediately and even knocked the dash cam off its mount. While the driver's face isn't visible in the footage, you can clearly sense the shock and fear in their movements. Thankfully, the driver escaped without physical injuries, though their car sustained heavy damage. But the implications of the accident are chilling. This was only one car on a high-speed motorway. Had there been multiple vehicles in the line of fire, the outcome could have been utterly catastrophic. Dump truck drives into halted traffic. There's a reason commercial drivers have a very tough training routine and exam. It's all to keep them accountable for handling such massive vehicles that are, more or less, the decisive force on a road's traffic. A Reddit post shared on r/dashcams shows what happens when the driver behind such a massive vehicle is either underqualified or just not very good at their job. The footage is from the dashcam of the dump truck that caused a major accident on a road that had a speed limit of 55. It shows the truck driving toward 3 stopped cars at full speed and ramming into them. According to the poster, the first car came to a full stop because they had an item of theirs fall out of the vehicle. They were in the process of retrieving it when 2 other cars decided to stop behind them instead of changing lanes. According to OP, that would have been more dangerous. From the video, you can clearly see that all 3 cars were very safely parked at a distance from each other and would not have had much problem after resuming their drive. However, despite the small vehicle driver's vigilance, things still went wrong when the dump truck crashed into the 3 cars at high speeds. The driver was clearly not paying attention and saw the 3 cars in front of them a bit too late. They tried to steer their car to the right, but only managed to make things worse. The 2 cars immediately in front of the truck sustained very heavy damage, while the first one managed to escape. The poster, who was in one of the vehicles, stated that her husband came out of the accident with a bruise, but she herself had to get multiple back surgeries and now has to live with a lifelong health problem. According to her, the dump truck driver was eventually found at fault and was fired from his job, but it's unclear if he faced further consequences for endangering the lives of multiple people. Level 2. Michigan State Police Cruiser Crash. The Michigan State Police Cruiser crash was a brutal accident that took place at the intersection of Michigan Avenue and Van Dorn Street. It left 2 vehicles completely wrecked, one of them being a police cruiser. The dashcam footage came directly from the patrol car that was involved. Around 1:30 a.m., the cruiser was driving down Michigan Avenue when it slammed into a black pickup truck that had just run a stop sign at the intersection. The collision was violent, with the police vehicle crashing into the side of the truck at full speed. Airbags from the police car were deployed instantly, and the footage cut off moments after impact. Later, reports revealed that the driver of the pickup was a 66-year-old man who was impaired at the time. He had completely disregarded the stop sign and drove onto the busy road without caution. As a result, the police cruiser bore the full brunt of his recklessness and was left heavily damaged. Of the 2 police officers and the cruiser, one was injured and had to be rushed to Henry Ford Hospital. His injuries weren't life-threatening, but they were severe enough to have been a horrific experience. The second officer, along with the pickup driver, escaped without injury. Still, the dashcam footage made it clear just how devastating the crash was. The fact that everyone survived with relatively minor injuries was nothing short of pure luck. Multi-car freeway wreck. Similar to the previous accident caused by a driver's inattentiveness, another crash in 2021 on the southbound I-110 freeway in South Los Angeles turned out to be even more fatal. It began in the early hours of the morning and escalated into a multi-car pileup within minutes. The footage shows a lone broken-down car sitting in the middle of the freeway. The driver had fled the scene early on without switching on the hazard lights. To make matters worse, the car was completely black and was blending almost too perfectly with the road and the night sky. A few seconds later, another car slammed into the abandoned car, clearly not seeing it without its hazard lights. The driver of the second car was still inside when 4 more vehicles plowed into the wreck at full speed, creating an out-of-control chain reaction. Things became even more aggravated when additional cars got damaged while trying to avoid the wreck, and for some strange reason, none of the damaged vehicles turned on their hazard lights. Something they're clearly required to do by law, and this only increased the risk for oncoming traffic, particularly with fog and poor visibility already reducing safety. 2 of the cars ended up so totaled they were unrecognizable. According to the LAPD, several of the drivers had to be rushed to the hospital. The man filming the incident even tried to warn approaching vehicles, but his efforts were in vain as the collisions continued. Speeding biker rear-ends a parked vehicle. There are times when, despite the severity of an accident, no party is truly at fault. A tragic example of this happened in 2017 in Singapore when 2 bikers rear-ended a stalled car on the highway. Both riders were security officers working at a nearby airport and were returning home from a shift when the devastating crash occurred. A passing car equipped with a dashcam happened to record the incident in real time. The dashcam car was driving in the fast lane when it came across a car with its hazard lights on, possibly due to a breakdown or some technical issue. As the dashcam driver tried to maneuver into another lane, 2 men on a motorcycle suddenly appeared from the left and crashed directly into the stalled vehicle. And since the biker's view was blocked by the dashcam car, they had almost no time to react and collided with the stalled vehicle at full force. The impact was so violent that one rider was thrown directly into the boot of the car, while the other was hurled into the air before hitting the ground several meters away. Footage shows both riders losing consciousness almost instantly. Reports later revealed that both men were rushed to the ICU in critical condition. One suffered a pelvic fracture and severe injuries to the leg. The other was in a far more life-threatening state, with a ruptured bladder and multiple fractured limbs. In the end, no clear blame could be placed on anyone involved. All parties had been following basic road rules, and yet the collision still happened. It was simply an unfortunate string of bad luck that ended up proving devastating for everyone involved. Level 3. Elder and child struck by swerving car in Sydney's southwest. Most victims of reckless driving aren't other cars, they're pedestrians who are literally just minding their own business. A dashcam video from a car stopped at a red light in Glenfield, Sydney, shows the moment a red Toyota sedan lost control. The driver of the sedan had sped through the traffic light without slowing down and was on course to collide with oncoming traffic. At the very last second, he somehow managed to swerve to avoid hitting the cars, but instead crashed straight into a 72-year-old grandmother standing on the crosswalk with her 4-year-old granddaughter. The grandmother ended up taking the full brunt of the collision and had to be rushed to the hospital in critical condition. The little girl was much more stable and was later revealed to be okay. Still, the force of the impact was so strong that she had to be cut free from a tree branch she was knocked into during the crash. The driver, meanwhile, was revealed to be an 18-year-old who was already driving on a suspended license. He didn't sustain any injuries himself, but was later charged with multiple driving offenses. Police made it clear they were determined to have a serious talk with him once he fully recovered from his superficial injuries. Biker accident at 160 miles per hour. A video went viral in 2021 for all the wrong reasons. It was dashcam footage of a bike rider who quite literally almost filmed his own death, barely managing to make it out alive. The video showed the guy speeding through heavy traffic in the middle of the night at speeds that were not only reckless, but downright criminal. He started off at 180 kilometers per hour and almost immediately raised his speed to a whopping 250-something before slowing down during thick stationary traffic. Once he thought the danger was out of the way, he sped up one more time and this time reached nearly 260 kilometers per hour. Unbeknownst to him, this was the last time he would ever ride his bike or even walk on his own again. Just a few seconds down the road, the man crashed into a stationary vehicle on the far left side of the road. His gargantuan speeds meant he had almost no time to spot the vehicle before it was too late. His dashcam footage showed him violently crashing into the stationary vehicle. While we can't exactly see the aftermath of the impact on the dashcam, the eerie quietness with the camera pointed at the sky is enough to prove that something had gone really wrong. When he finally woke up, he was left disabled for life and had to be cared for by caretakers and his family 24/7. So he not only put himself in danger, but also created a life sentence for his own family members who are now bound to his disability. In chasing a momentary thrill, he would never be able to ride a bike again. Fatal head-on collision, raw footage. While there isn't much information about this particular dashcam video, it is considered one of the most disturbing crashes ever caught on camera. The video is titled "Fatal Car Crash Caught on Camera, Raw Footage," and shows the exact moment a careless and possibly highly impaired van driver fatally rams into a truck driving on the opposite side. The video starts off with the car behind the van filming a normal drive. It's a two-way road with heavy traffic moving steadily on both sides. A few seconds of calm turn into a nightmare when the van slowly, almost deliberately begins drifting into the opposite lane. It may have been because the driver was trying to overtake the truck in front of them. However, instead of instantly moving back to its own lane after seeing a massive commercial truck barreling toward it, the van literally places itself directly in the middle of the opposite lane. Because of this, the truck quite literally crashes into the vehicle at full speed and obliterates it. This isn't even an exaggeration. The video literally shows the van being vaporized into little pieces. According to internet users, if you slow the footage down, you can even see a mist of blood appear right after the impact, which suggests that the driver of the van may have died in that very moment. And that's not all, because the car with the dashcam is also heavily impacted. Debris from the accident and fire sparks fly right into it, which forces it to stop in the middle of an already busy two-way road. While the truck appears far less damaged, the footage highlights how it was never at fault and yet still became part of a fatal wreck. Truck driver kills 6 people in a bus. One of the most tragic truck collision cases happened in Ohio, where a truck driver rammed into a vehicle from the opposite side of the road near a school zone. The impact pushed the car into a school bus full of children, setting off a chain reaction that involved 5 more vehicles. The wreck ended with 6 people dead, 5 cars destroyed, and several of them catching fire. Among those who died were 3 students, an English teacher, and 2 chaperones. But arguably the most shocking thing is how little he was punished for it. The driver was James McDonald, a man in his 60s who was initially charged with recklessness and vehicular manslaughter. According to the charges, James had been on his phone during the accident and was completely distracted. If that had been proven true, James would have been in for a long legal battle and likely faced decades in prison. However, it was later established that he was not using his phone and was not considered a reckless driver. The judge instead labeled him as a negligent driver at most and reduced his punishment to only 18 months in jail. That was the entire sentence he received for killing 6 people. Naturally, people were furious, and the victims' families were the most devastated. During his final court hearing, several family members expressed their rage, saying they hoped he would regret his actions for the rest of his life. Survivors who were present at the trial also voiced their frustration at how small his sentencing turned out to be. James himself was given the chance to speak, and he expressed deep regret for what had happened. "I'm very sorry this happened. I have no clue what happened. I'm not going to lie to you and say I did. I pray every night to God, I do, for every single one of y'all and everybody involved in this accident. I do. And you can't say that I have no remorse, because I have very much remorse. Every day that I live, I have remorse. Every day that I shall live, I will have remorse." Regardless of his words, people were not satisfied and expected far more from the justice system. And sadly, there are dozens more cases just as shocking and worth knowing about. Consider subscribing to our channel to keep up with them. Level 4. Iranian missile strike on Ashdod power station. 2025 has been a very eventful year, for the lack of better words. And with that, we've come across so many viral clips that are not only horrific, but also something that would have been considered fictitious in another era. One such clip is the viral dashcam footage of the exact moment in the Israel-Iran war when an Iranian missile struck a power station in Ashdod. The footage shows a person driving by the Ashdod power station, and right as they're about to pass, the station goes up with a very loud boom, sending stones and debris flying everywhere. After reports showed that the attack on the power station, while thankfully resulting in no casualties, did cut off power in the entire area for a long time. The station's operational capacity was completely gone, and the structure itself was damaged beyond recognition. The car with the dash cam wasn't destroyed, but the sheer force of the missile was enough to throw large pieces of concrete and stone at it. The driver naturally tried to get out of the danger zone, and the video ended with him speeding away, windshield covered in dust and debris. SUV rampage in Byron. Child rescued amid violent traffic stop. Sierra Hubert is a 24-year-old woman from Byron, Georgia, who got famous for all the wrong reasons in 2022. What should have been a routine red light traffic stop ended up becoming deadly for everyone on the road when she completely lost control and went on a rampage for nearly 8 minutes with her child in the back seat. All of it was captured on a police dash cam. The footage begins with Sierra's SUV crashing into a police car, while dozens of bystanders try to stop her before she does something irreversible. Despite being surrounded by police cars, she somehow thinks the best option is to push through them. This ended up with her crashing into vehicles and nearly hitting people in the process. A chase follows, lasting several tense minutes. The caller who had originally reported Sierra told police that she was driving into oncoming traffic and putting her toddler in danger. Unfortunately, that turned out to be true. Multiple officers tried to talk her out of her tantrum, but the driver was as uncooperative as they come. She was willing to endanger multiple lives instead of getting just one ticket. With talks not working out and Sierra still on a rampage, the cops resorted to their last option. They placed stop sticks under her tires to deflate them. Even then, Sierra kept going, managing to hit a few officers and bystanders as she tried to escape. Her final attempt came when she reversed into a patrol car, then rammed forward into another cruiser. By that point, her tires were shredded, and she was finally cornered. The funniest part is, when she was finally arrested and forced out of her SUV, the only thing she kept repeating was, "I didn't do anything." Meanwhile, bystanders rushed to get her child out of the car, who was thankfully unharmed. Russian missile debris falls on Kiev highway. In a scene that looks like it comes straight out of a post-apocalyptic war movie, debris from an intercepted Russian missile came crashing down onto a Kiev highway in the middle of the day. The incident happened in 2023 during a Russian missile barrage on the capital of Ukraine. A dashcam caught the exact moment when a massive fragment of the missile fell onto a busy multi-lane road, landing terrifyingly close to a white sedan. The footage feels like watching a miracle unfold in real time. It begins normally and feels like just another rush hour scene with cars at a traffic light moving along as usual. Then suddenly, the missile debris slams into the ground and narrowly misses the white car that was seconds away from disaster. The road instantly turns chaotic. The cars in front of the dashcam vehicle swerve and try to put as much distance between themselves and the impact as possible. The drivers are visibly and understandably shaken after being nearly wiped out. The car with the dashcam literally records everything, including the chunks of debris flying over it and crashing into it. Reports later confirmed that all 11 incoming missiles were successfully intercepted and spared Kiev from what could have been devastating damage. Even so, the debris falling down on residential areas was dangerous on its own. Miraculously, there were no reported deaths. And while a few people may have been slightly injured, the fact that everyone walked away alive was nothing short of remarkable. OHP fatal officer-involved shooting. In another case of a routine check that turned fatal for one of the parties involved, a dashcam captured the infamous encounter between an Oklahoma Highway Patrol trooper and a semi-truck driver who was suspected to have illegal substances in his vehicle. The stop began when the trooper pulled over the semi-truck driver, Alejandro Fodoa, for not having a front license plate. The trooper approached the truck and tried to get Fodoa to cooperate, but like so many of these encounters, instead of complying, the suspect tried to flee the scene. The footage clearly shows Fodoa wasn't in the mood to play along, and unfortunately, as tragic as it is, he faced the consequences. After seeing Fodoa's suspicious behavior, the trooper naturally grew wary and asked to search the truck. Fodoa refused and tried to get back into his vehicle in an attempt to leave. At some point during the standoff, Fodoa stepped on the gas while the trooper was still beside the truck, and it looked like the trooper could be dragged or run over by the big rig's wheels. By then, the situation had escalated to the point where the trooper discharged his weapon and fired multiple rounds. Fodoa was fatally shot and was later pronounced dead from his injuries. The Creek County District Attorney reviewed the case and declined to file charges against the trooper. He ruled that there wasn't enough evidence to support a criminal violation under the circumstances. On the other hand, Fodoa's family still wants more transparency. They say he was a hard-working man with no criminal record and are asking for clearer video, audio, and documentation of what happened in those seconds before it turned deadly. Naturally, they want answers and some form of accountability. Fatal deputy shooting caught on dashcam. Most cases we've talked about before involving police officers ended with no one getting seriously injured. However, a traffic stop in Blount County, Tennessee became deadly in a matter of a few seconds when the suspect opened fire at officers. In February of 2024, a man was stopped at a traffic light by police officers for erratic driving and driving on the wrong side of the road. The two officers in charge of the stop were Deputy Shelby Eggers and Deputy Greg McCowan. Eggers was on the scene first and instantly noticed something off with the driver. After several minutes of back and forth about official documents and a license, she realized the suspect smelled intensely of. That's when she asked the man to step out of the car, and it was at this point the entire thing went from verbal bickering to fatal. When the man fully stopped responding to her commands, she called on McCowan for backup. Eventually, the suspect flat out refused to exit the car, and had to be forced out. The dashcam footage shows McCowan attempting to finally put an end to the showdown by using a taser on the suspect. Sadly, the attempt not only failed, but only aggravated the suspect so badly that he took out his own firearm. The rest of the event went as badly as you can expect. In a split second, he opened fire on the deputies. McCowan was fatally struck and collapsed to the ground instantly. Eggers was also hit fairly badly, but was thankfully alive. The suspect fled the scene in all the chaos, and a 5-day manhunt ensued. Authorities later confirmed that Deputy Greg McGowan lost his life in the shooting, while Deputy Shelby Eggers survived her injuries. As for DeHart, the manhunt kept Blount County on edge for days before he was eventually captured, and he now faces multiple charges. Level 5. Events leading to Georgia officer's death. In June 2021, a tragic and completely senseless event unfolded in Holly Springs, Georgia, that ended up costing 25-year-old Officer Joe Burson his life. For Officer Burson and his partner, stopping 28-year-old reckless driver Anzi Dolce was supposed to be just a routine thing. However, their own police car's dash cam recorded the moment everything turned violent. The interaction with Dolce began calmly enough. Officer Burson approached the suspect's vehicle and asked for compliance like most of these cases usually go. But clearly from the footage, Dolce had no intention of cooperating. He grew more aggressive and restless and was eventually pushed to his breaking point. Dashcam footage shows the exact moment Officer Burson tried to enter the suspect's vehicle to force compliance. Dolce hit the gas, attempting to flee, and dragged Officer Burson along with him. For several horrifying seconds, you can clearly see Burson being pulled along with the car against his will. Despite the circumstances, Burson still managed to do his job as best he could. He somehow managed to uncover his weapon and fire at Dolce, fatally wounding him in the process. The rampage eventually came to a stop after the vehicle veered into a grassy field. But by then, the damage was already irreversible. Burson was gone. Dolce himself sustained injuries beyond recovery and was later pronounced dead at the hospital. The community later described Burson as someone who always went out of his way to do things by the book and with compassion. He is now survived by his wife, parents, and siblings. Russian missile strikes in Dnipro residential area. Another example of a completely surreal moment of conflict caught on camera was when a Russian missile struck a residential area in Ukraine. The entire tragedy was caught on a car's dash cam that was only a few meters away from the area of impact. The clip starts off with a car driving down a road before coming to a stop at a red light. The driver has music blasting through the stereo, and it looks like a normal, everyday scene. Even the dashcam driver seems like they're just out running an ordinary errand. Then, in an instant, everything changes when a massive explosion is heard, immediately followed by the building directly in the camera's line of sight collapsing. Right after the loud boom, a huge plume of smoke rises as glass, concrete, and dust scatter everywhere. Once the initial shock passes, the driver manages to reverse and tries to get out of the area. But the force of the blast was strong enough to send large chunks of debris crashing onto their car, which very likely damaged it in the process. Videos from the aftermath of the strike show just how serious and deadly it really was. Reports later confirmed that at least 24 residents were killed, with more than 300 injured, a large number of them being children. The apartment block itself was left with an entire section missing. Rescue workers arrived on scene quickly and were recorded pulling people from the rubble and evacuating survivors. The fact that this attack targeted a non-military area full of civilians, many of them children, makes it even more disturbing. Level 6. Sudden shootout erupts near Minneapolis Market on Dashcam. On August 20th, 2023, a mass shooting in South Minneapolis was caught on the dash cam of a city council member who had just been passing through the area. He was stopped at a red light and ended up recording the whole thing as two men opened fire at a group of shoppers. At first, everything appears ordinary as you see people walking out of grocery stores and minding their own business. Then, suddenly, everyone begins to scatter when bursts of rapid gunfire started taking over the scene. The dashcam shows bystanders ducking, sprinting, and desperately trying to get out of the line of fire. The shooters themselves cannot be seen in the footage. Police reports later confirmed that 8 people were hit during the attack, including 5 teenage boys. Thankfully, none of the victims sustained life-threatening injuries and all were declared stable. While everyone survived, the injuries and the panic left behind made it painfully clear how dangerous the scene had been. Just a week earlier, there had been another mass shooting nearby that ended in a death, which only made this one feel even more alarming for the neighborhood. Dallas police shooting suspect during chase. 46-year-old officer Darren Burks from Dallas was minding his own business sitting in his parked patrol car when things suddenly went sideways. A man named Corey Cobb Bay approached the officer's vehicle and began recording what looked like the start of a conversation. He did proceed to briefly talk with Officer Burks, but then did something not only unexpected, but extremely sinister. Cobb Bay suddenly pulled out a handgun and shot Burks while he was still sitting behind the wheel of his patrol car. Burks was fatally wounded. Later reports confirmed that the attack was clearly premeditated, with officials stating that Cobb Bay's intention all along was to execute the officer. When the news of Burks being shot reached nearby responders, they rushed to the scene. Senior Corporal Jamie Farmer and Carissa David were the first to arrive, but they quickly found themselves caught in the chaos. By then, the suspect had already gone back to his own car, not to escape, but to retrieve his shotgun and finish what he started. Spotting the additional officers in the area, he opened fire. The shots were returned almost instantly, but Farmer still ended up being struck badly in the leg. The second responding officer, Carissa David, arrived moments later but was still trying to assess the situation. The moment she exited her vehicle, Cobb Bay ran toward her and shot her in the face multiple times. Both Farmer and David suffered critical injuries from the exchange, but after immediate medical treatment, were later declared stable. Sadly, the same could not be said for Officer Burks. He tragically lost his life that day. Cobb Bay managed to flee the scene, but didn't get far. Only minutes later, Dallas police cornered him along I-35E. Instead of cooperating, he once again raised his shotgun and threatened the officers. And in the final confrontation, police fired on him, ending his life. Wrong-way driver, fatal collision on I-43. A relatively recent dashcam video shows the tragedy caused by a head-on collision in Ozaukee County, Wisconsin. On May 26, 2025, multiple 911 calls came in reporting a driver going the wrong way on I-43. The suspect was 34-year-old man Ace View, who was driving on the wrong side at a whopping 100 miles per hour. For the most part, almost all the cars he was about to collide with managed to get out of the way just in time. The reports at first mentioned a red sedan speeding south in the northbound lanes, but Ace's own dashcam footage showed something else. He had actually been driving normally for the most part and had been sticking to his lane, until something happened and he abruptly made a U-turn going the complete opposite way. Sadly, that was as far as his string of luck would go. Just a few seconds later, he smashed head-on into a blue Ford carrying a family of 3. The father, Jay, and the mother, Nicole, tragically lost their lives before they could even be pulled from the wreck. Their daughter was left critically injured and was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening wounds. Ace himself was also badly hurt, but somehow managed to survive the impact. He was later arrested and charged with homicide. Authorities also suspected that alcohol or other substances might have been involved in Ace's reckless driving, though the toxicology report has yet to be released. Level 7. Deadly shootout with Florida deputies. A fairly graphic encounter that escalated rapidly and was caught on police dashcam involved 38-year-old Paris Wilder. He was a career offender who, unknown to the police officers pulling him over, already had about 40 prior arrests. The video shows two deputies doing a routine traffic stop of a vehicle with 3 adults and a baby inside. It's not certain why the car was stopped, but the deputy's demeanor makes it look like a low-level, non-escalating situation that would have been resolved in a few minutes if the adults had cooperated. For the most part, the footage looks pretty normal, even a bit wholesome. It shows Deputy Tyler Tommen standing with one of the adults while Deputy Brian Potters talks to Wilder through the passenger window. Potters even seems pleasantly surprised to see a baby and a dog in the car as he politely asks Wilder to step out. He tells Wilder he has kids of his own and knows how to handle a baby crime. Then, everything goes sideways. As Wilder steps out of the car, he suddenly opens fire on the 2 deputies with a rifle he had hidden in the vehicle. The attack is completely unprovoked and totally unexpected. Deputy Potters is struck on the leg but still manages to draw his weapon and return fire. In the chaos, Wilder's rifle jams and he uses the butt of the gun to strike Potters in the head. Thankfully, Deputy Tommen moves fast. He returns fire and shoots Wilder multiple times until Wilder is disarmed and eventually killed in the exchange. Potters, despite suffering serious injuries to his leg and head, survived and was treated after the shooting. The baby in the car was not harmed. Fatal police shooting during traffic stop captured on Dashcam. On September 14, 2022, 29-year-old Timothy Michael Randall was fatally shot by a sheriff's deputy during a traffic stop in Rusk County, Texas. In the previous accounts, we looked at events and accidents where police officers themselves became victims or had their hand forced into doing the unforgivable. However, in Timothy's case, the situation was reversed. It was the officer who pulled the trigger almost completely unprompted and ended up killing a completely innocent man. The dashcam footage, which remained hidden from the public eye for almost 2 years, later showed who was truly at fault, and it definitely wasn't Timothy. The officer, Sergeant Shane Iverson, ordered Timothy out of his car and he immediately cooperated. He was asked to take his hands out of his pockets, but the victim was really just slipping his wallet back into them. For some reason, Iverson thought this was threatening and assumed Timothy was reaching for a weapon in his back pocket. He then proceeded to pat Timothy down, only to find nothing on him. But I guess at that point, the man had already decided to make the victim suffer for what he considered non-compliance. He then wrestled Timothy onto the ground despite him repeatedly saying that he had nothing on him. Those pleas fell on deaf ears until Timothy finally asked Iverson what he was even under arrest for. That was when the victim clearly lost his wits and was scared beyond belief. Naturally, he did what he felt was right at the moment. He tried to flee from the man who was being unnecessarily aggressive with him. But the very minute he took his first step, Iverson opened fire. Timothy was shot in the chest and died on the side of the road. Autopsy reports later showed that the bullet had lodged so far inside him that it had torn through his lungs, ribs, and heart. The only thing Iverson can say to that was, "I smoked a guy." It wasn't until 2 years later, after the release of the dashcam footage, that Timothy's family realized their son had been killed for no reason at all. Iverson had quietly retired and disappeared into the shadows while they had been grieving all this time. Sadly, though, Sergeant Iverson was not indicted even after everything. But he was denied immunity by a federal judge. Still, the secrecy surrounding the footage and the unanswered questions left the community shaken. If you found this video disturbing enough, check out our other volumes of our disturbing dashcam videos.